True mercy belongs to the harmless, never to the dangerous. To forgive the harmless is grace. To forgive the dangerous is suicide. Mercy toward a snake does not tame it. It only gives it more time to sink its fangs into your flesh. That is why half measures are fatal. A small injury is worse than none, for it sharpens hatred without removing the threat. A half strike creates only an enemy burning with vengeance. The weak fail because they always stop short. They strike halfway, punish halfway, protect halfway, and halfway is the road to defeat. The strong endure because they understand that safety lies only in finality. A threat is not silenced until its roots are torn out, until nothing remains that can rise against you. To strike without hesitation, to remove without leaving fragments behind. This is not cruelty, it is wisdom. In the game of power there are no harmless wounds, no forgiving threats into safety. There is only survival or destruction. The line is drawn, and you must choose which side to stand on. Men ask, what decides fate? Skill, wisdom, or fortune? The losers cling to fortune as if it were a god, blessing and cursing them without reason. When chance smiles, they call themselves lucky. When it turns, they whimper of misfortune. They worship fortune instead of commanding it, and in doing so, they make themselves slaves. But victors know better. Fortune is no goddess, it is a tempest. It drowns the unprepared, but carries the bold to shores unreachable to the timid. That is why fortune favors only those who dare seize her. To wait for luck is the strategy of beggars. To seize fortune, even at the cost of peril, is the path of kings. Boldness terrifies the cautious and seduces fortune herself. The hesitant wait for certainty, and in waiting, watch opportunity vanish. The bold leap, and though they may land in chaos, they bend that chaos into order. Fortune does not belong to the hesitant. It belongs to those audacious enough to act as though it already belongs to them. The weak treat fortune as fate, an invisible hand dictating rise or fall. They pray for opportunities instead of creating them. They forget that fortune is drawn to motion, not stillness. A man who waits for the perfect chance is left behind by the one who moves, takes, risks. History remembers the generals who marched into storms while weaker men cowered in their tents. It remembers the rulers who staked everything on a single decisive move and rose higher than 1,000 cautious rivals. Fortune smiles upon those who behave as if she cannot resist them. It is not chance that crowns such men. It is their boldness that forces fortune to bend. Losers kneel before fortune. Victors command her, yet boldness alone is not enough. Fortune is as cruel as she is kind, and those who leap without strength to bend her are broken. That is why the wise know that adaptation is survival. Bend like iron, not clay. The weak mistake rigidity for strength. They cling to plans long after the world has shifted beneath them. When fortune changes, they collapse because they cannot bend. They snap because they mistake stubbornness for courage. The strong understand differently. Strength is not the refusal to bend, but the refusal to break. Iron yields under the hammer's strike, but hardens stronger than before. A river bends around mountains, never smashing headlong yet, wearing stone down with patience. Adaptation is not surrender. It is strategy. To change shape is not to lose power, but to preserve it. Those who adapt survive storms that bury others, because they refuse to remain what cannot endure. The weak boast of consistency, even as their plans fail. Their empires crumble. Their foundations rot. They cling to sinking ships, too proud to swim. They call this loyalty. In truth, it is cowardice masquerading as principle. To adapt is not weakness. It is mastery of circumstance. The victors bend where the losers break. They shift alliances when the wind changes, alter tactics when the ground shifts, abandon sinking ventures without hesitation. By doing so, they remain standing while others lie shattered. The one who adapts commands both time and chance because he refuses to be trapped by either. Boldness without adaptation is recklessness. Adaptation without boldness is cowardice. But united, they form a blade no storm can extinguish. The bold seize the moment. The adaptable turn disasters into opportunity. That is why the great endure, not because fortune always favored them, but because they bent her cruelty into advantage and multiplied her kindness into empire. But here lies another truth. The weak lose not only because they hesitate or because they cling. They lose because they reveal too much. Why do the weak whisper their plans before they are ready? Because secrecy is unbearable to them. They crave validation. They long for applause before achievement. They need to be seen, to be understood, to be comforted. And in that craving, they surrender advantage. A plan revealed too soon is already half defeated. Once intentions are known, they can be resisted, blocked, destroyed. That is why the wise conceal their aims until the moment of strike. The victor hides his purpose as a hunter hides his scent. He advances with shadows at his back, never betraying the strike until it is too late. By the time others understand his design, his victory is already secured. The losers despise secrecy because it isolates them. They cannot endure being underestimated or doubted. Their need to reveal becomes their undoing. Meanwhile, the victor thrives in being overlooked. He wears aimlessness like a mask. He appears harmless, and enemies lower their guard. He appears uncertain, and rivals dismiss him. Then, when he moves not as a possibility, but as inevitability. The strike that comes without warning breaks hardest. No man defends well against what he never saw coming. To conceal your intention is not cowardice. It is ambush raised into art. To rule with shadows is to wield surprise sharper than any steel. Yet secrecy alone does not secure power. There is another weapon, more silent, more insidious. Division. The weak cling to unity as if numbers alone were strength. They imagine loyalty is natural, that alliances endure. But alliances are fragile, and unity is an illusion. A single whisper can turn brother against brother. A single spark can burn through the tightest bond. The victor does not confront armies whole. He splits them apart, setting them against one another until he stands before fragments instead of a wall. Divide a family and you weaken its will. Divide a faction and you dissolve its strength. Divide an army and you scatter it into frightened men running in different directions. Conquest becomes simple when the conquered are already at war with themselves. The weak never see this because they believe too much in loyalty. They imagine men will remain united under hardship. That trust is eternal. But every alliance has cracks, and cracks can be widened. The wise ruler whispers lies to one ally, promises to another, suspicion to all. Suspicion grows faster than trust. Division multiplies quicker than unity. Soon a rival becomes paranoid, doubting his own defenders, fearing betrayal from his own circle. And then he collapses, undone not by the victor's sword, but by the betrayal of those closest to him. Division is war without blood. To break men's faith in each other is to weaken them more than 100 battles. Concealment and division are not separate. They are companions. Hide your own intent while exposing fault lines in others. Conceal your strike while revealing to them their fears. They stumble in darkness, suspecting each other, while you dismantle them piece by piece. By the time they know the hand behind the collapse, it no longer matters. They are already broken. But power is not sustained by cunning alone. Men obey not only force but also faith. What gives a ruler the air of inevitability, the presence that makes men bow before he speaks? It is not just raw strength, but the image of strength. The weak believe power lies only in armies, weapons, numbers. But raw force, without image, is forgotten, challenged, resisted. Power must be dressed in symbols, sanctified by ritual, made flesh in myth. Men are not bound only by iron chains. They are bound by invisible chains of meaning. The crown, the cross, the throne, the uniform, the ceremony, these rule deeper than weapons. They make obedience feel not only necessary, but holy. The weak mock symbols as empty, but they bow to them every day without knowing it. They sneer at rituals, yet they are moved by them unconsciously. The strong understand what the weak deny, that men crave symbols, for symbols elevate power into destiny. The weak strip away image, believing substance alone will suffice. They speak too plainly, they dress carelessly, they abolish ceremony. In doing so, they lower themselves to the crowd. But the crowd does not follow equals. It follows figures raised above them. A general without a uniform is just another man with a sword. A king without ritual is just another man with a title. Wrap him in robes, crown him with gold, surround him with ceremony, and suddenly he is no longer a man, but a myth. Symbols transform flesh into legend. Ritual transforms command into permanence. The weak fail because they discard the invisible chains. They ask why their words carry no weight, why their commands are mocked. It is because they stripped away the garments that made their voice sacred. The strong endure because they master the theater of power. Their very presence becomes law. Their image commands obedience before they speak. Men obey not only what they fear, but what they believe in, and symbols make belief unavoidable. The first law of victory is this: strike with finality. Mercy belongs to the harmless, never to the dangerous. To forgive a harmless man is grace. To forgive a threat is suicide. The weak lose because they strike halfway, they punish halfway, they protect halfway. Halfway is the road to ruin. The strong win because they cut to the root. They destroy without hesitation. They leave no embers that can reignite. Safety is not found in kindness, but in completion. Remember this: a threat half crushed is a threat twice as sharp when it returns. So do not wound when you can kill. Do not silence when you can erase. Only finality grants true security. The second law of victory is this: seize fortune with boldness, then bend it with adaptation. The losers worship fortune as if it were a god, blessing and cursing them at random. But fortune is no deity. Fortune is a tempest. It drowns the still, and it carries the bold. The weak hesitate, waiting for luck to smile. The strong leap, and though they land in chaos, they carve order from it. Boldness terrifies the cautious and seduces fortune itself. Yet boldness alone is not enough. Fortune can betray as quickly as she blesses, and so the strong bend like iron. They shift, they adapt, they survive storms by flowing around mountains instead of shattering against them. Rigidity is death. Flexibility is power. The timid are washed away because they wait. The reckless are broken because they cannot adapt. But the bold who adapt command fortune itself, making her their servant instead of their master. The third law of victory is this: conceal your intent and divide your enemies. The weak crave validation. They whisper their plans to friends, announce their dreams to strangers, surrendering their advantage long before the strike. But the strong advance cloaked in silence. They move like hunters in the dark, invisible until the kill. By the time their aim is revealed, it is too late. Concealment is not cowardice. It is ambush elevated into art, and once their own purpose is hidden, the victor turns to others, prying them apart. For unity is an illusion. Every bond has cracks. Every alliance can be widened. A whisper of suspicion, a spark of rivalry, and a brother becomes an enemy. Divide to conquer, and armies dissolve into frightened individuals. Families fracture, factions collapse. Concealment blinds your enemies. Division poisons them against each other. Combined, these weapons make your strike inevitable. The fourth law of victory is this: rule with symbols, then surround yourself with inevitability. Power does not live only in the sword or the crown, but in the images men worship. A general without uniform is just another man. A king without ritual is just another name. But drape him in robes, crown him with gold, surround him with ceremony, and he becomes more than flesh. He becomes myth. Symbols anchor loyalty. Rituals transform obedience into reverence. Yet symbols must be joined with inevitability, for men do not follow what is right. They follow what is certain. The weak reveal doubt, pleading for loyalty, begging for faith. Their cracks spread like disease until no one believes in them. The strong cloak themselves in destiny. They act as if triumph is already decided. They carry themselves as if defeat is impossible. Men rally to certainty, even if it is only appearance. Rule with symbols to be revered. Radiate inevitability to be obeyed. Together they turn men into willing followers, and your rule into legend. The fifth law of victory is this: apply pressure, then exhaust the will of your enemy before battle begins. The weak believe in persuasion, in giving space, in allowing choice. But freedom breeds rebellion. Options nourish resistance. Pressure suffocates both. It narrows the walls until obedience feels like relief. A city surrounded need not be stormed. Hunger will do the work. A rival burdened by suspicion need not be arrested. The weight will crush him. Pressure is the invisible hand that bends men's choices until only your path remains. Yet pressure alone is not enough, for a cornered lion still has claws. That is why the wise exhaust their enemy before drawing steel. They stretch time, drain supplies, humiliate slowly, whisper doubts, poison alliances. The rival begins to fight himself long before he faces you. By the time your blade rises, his spirit is already broken. His body may stand, but his will is dust. Pressure and exhaustion together win wars without spectacle, victories before battles, empires before blood. The sixth law of victory is this: engineer choices, then crush resistance with inevitability. The weak believe freedom is sacred, that choices make men powerful. But choice is illusion. It can be narrowed, bent, shaped like metal in fire. A man believes he is free, when in truth, you have already chosen for him. You do not remove options. You trap him in a cage, where every door leads where you desire. And when he steps through, he will call it his decision, not yours. The losers leave their rivals open fields of possibility, hoping for fairness. The strong build corridors so tight that the only path is the leash they have prepared. Once choice is engineered, resistance can be broken without open war. Doubt is a plague. Inevitability is its cure. When men believe your triumph is certain, they abandon the idea of defiance. Even before your strike, they surrender to what they think cannot be avoided, appear inevitable, and you win not only their obedience but their faith. The seventh law of victory is this: wage invisible war and win before the first blow. The weak crave the spectacle of combat. They rush toward it, eager to prove themselves, to taste the noise and the blood. But in their rush, they face enemies at full strength. The strong are patient. They weaken rivals long before the battlefield. They drain supplies, spread rumors, poison allies against them, strip away their confidence piece by piece. By the time steel is drawn, the enemy is already hollow. War is then not a contest, but a confirmation. It is not strength against strength. It is strength against exhaustion, certainty against despair. The weak boast of courage in battle, the strong boast of battles that were won before they even began. The eighth law of victory is this: cripple your successors, then outlive your rivals in memory. The weak wish to be remembered as generous teachers, as fathers of greatness. They raise heirs who surpass them, forgetting that disciples become rivals, sons become usurpers, protégés become executioners. To allow another to eclipse you is not legacy. It is self-destruction disguised as pride. The wise diminish their heirs, fragment power, train successors in pieces but never in totality. A successor must rise in your shadow, never above it. Better a loyal mediocrity than a genius who erases your name. Yet beyond succession lies something greater: memory. Every man dies, every throne empties, every empire crumbles, but not every name is forgotten. The weak vanish into silence, buried not only in earth, but in oblivion. The strong carve themselves into the marrow of history, ensuring their shadow rules centuries after their body is dust. Victory over flesh is temporary. Victory over memory is eternal. The ninth law of victory is this: weaponize fear and desire together. Men are not moved by reason, but by the twin chains of terror and longing. The weak try to inspire with promises, with kindness, with trust. But men forget promises. They consume kindness. They betray trust. What they never forget is the hand that terrifies them and the vision that seduces them. Fear without hope creates rebellion. Hope without fear breeds disobedience. But bind the two together, and men become slaves who call themselves loyal. They will dread disappointing you and hunger for your favor. They will obey not only to avoid pain, but to chase the image of glory you dangle before them. The strong do not rule only with the sword. They rule with the dream of the crown and the nightmare of the lash. This twin pull of terror and temptation is stronger than chains of iron, for it binds both body and soul. The 10th and final law of victory is this: build yourself into myth and never die. Power is not only held in the present, it is carried in the imagination of those who live after you. Flesh perishes, thrones crumble, crowns tarnish, but myth endures. The weak chase applause, wealth, and comfort, all of which decay. The strong chase permanence. They cloak themselves in symbols. They radiate inevitability. They wield pressure and exhaustion, secrecy and division. They cut down rivals with finality, bend fortune, adapt without shame, and engineer every choice until victory is unavoidable. And in doing so, they carve themselves so deep into the memory of men that centuries whisper their name, as if still alive. To rule in absence more than others rule in presence, that is immortality. And immortality is the only throne time cannot steal. So remember, strike with finality, seize fortune boldly, bend it without pride, conceal your intent, divide your enemies, rule with symbols, radiate inevitability, apply pressure, exhaust the enemy's will, engineer choices, wage invisible war, cripple your successors, outlive your rivals in memory, weaponize fear and desire together, build yourself into myth and never die. These are the 10 laws of victory, condensed from centuries of struggle and sharpened to their cruelest edge. The weak will always lose because they hesitate, they reveal, they beg, they cling. The strong will always win because they strike, they conceal, they pressure, they command. Decide now which you will be. For history does not remember those who lived half by these laws. It remembers only those who lived by them fully, and in doing so became eternal.